It is Thursday, July 10th, but rest assured, we have hockey thoughts. We're going to talk about the Blackhawks rebuild and how long it might take for them to get to contention today on the CHGO Blackhawks Podcast. Welcome into the CHGO Blackhawks Podcast. Hope you're having a good Thursday here in steamy Chicago or wherever you're watching us from. We appreciate you. I'm Jay Zawoski. That's Mario Tirabassi. Sarah's running the show. Devin's here waiting to run the show soon. It's going to happen. I told Devin I believe she's ready.
She made the stream.
See?
She made the thumbnail and everything.
Look at that. Look how nice the thumbnail looks, everybody. Thumbs up for Devin in the thumbnail creation.
Like the video for the thumbnail.
Exactly right. Make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube page as well. And if you're listening on your old podcast app, thank you. Follow, subscribe, rate, review, all that great stuff. Today, we are going to spread our... Wow, I almost said legs. Spread our wings a little bit and talk about... I don't know what's wrong with me.
That's a much different
That's what happens when I get an hour of sleep. Anyway, we are going to talk about the Blackhawks rebuild. A nice piece written by Paul Paduti in the Daily Faceoff yesterday about rebuilds in the NHL. I see that's been kind of making the rounds. People have been debating about it. So it's kind of inspired today's topic. So I definitely want to shout out Paul. You can follow him at Adjusted Hockey with Daily Faceoff. If you read that, this is a very difficult undertaking for a writer to do because there are teams that will tell you, like Kyle Davidson has said, we are rebuilding. It is a complete teardown to the studs. This is the plan. This is what we're going to do. Other team, I remember a couple years ago, before he traded for Seth Jones and Marc-Andre Fleury, Stan Bowman said, we're going to kind of retool on the fly here. We're going to go a little younger.
I remember the term being youth movement.
Yes, a bit of a youth movement. And then completely abandoned
highlighted
that.
by Philip Kurashev.
Yes, right. And then completely abandoned that a year later. But then there's teams like Buffalo who just are kind of bad. Or, you know, like Nashville is not rebuilding. They just had a bad year. So the way Paul did it was he defined a rebuild starting when a team has at least 2 bottom 10 finishes, including a bottom 8 finish in a 3-year period, and says a rebuild ends when a team makes the playoffs in consecutive years or wins the Stanley Cup in its return to the postseason. So, again, I'm not ripping on Paul here. It is a very hard thing to do, but I think that sort of muddies the waters a little bit. Because when you look at the results he comes up with, by definition, rebuilds take forever, right? But an actual rebuild, the most recent actual rebuild that I will say this was a tear it down to the studs rebuild that resulted in a Stanley Cup is the Avalanche. And he has the Avalanche rebuild taking 11 years.
Yeah, having it start in 2009 and ended in 2019 when they made the postseason in back-to-back seasons, but they also had 2 postseason appearances in 2010 and 2014 in that run. Obviously not consecutive seasons, but it's not they didn't get out of that run of like mostly you're missing the postseason. Obviously, then you also know the Avalanche won the Stanley Cup in one of those years. They won the President's Trophy, went to Cup final a couple of years. Like they're out of it. That is an emphatic like we are back at the top of the league. I don't know. I definitely get the work that was put in here. It's a lot of good information. But I think as you're saying, like the context of what the team is trying to accomplish is missing. Sprout in the chat here says another one is the Lightning. Yeah, Tampa Bay Lightning.
Yeah.
I think they definitely bottomed out and then got back to it. That's listed in here. 2008 to 2014, they were in that rebuild frame, but they had a playoff appearance in 2011, but it wasn't obviously wasn't consecutive. Then they get back to it in 2014 and 15, and then run to the Cup final. So, yeah, I mean it's a good amount of information. It gives you a good framework of what rebuild timelines can be, as he says in the article. 8.5 years kind of comes to the average.
Yeah.
But I think the context of what you're trying to frame the information as is missing, and that's just from a Blackhawks standpoint.
Yes.
Because as this says in here, they've been rebuilding since the 2017-2018 season,
No,
which they
that's
haven't.
not true. The rebuild started in 2022.
Any time under Stan Bowman is not considered a rebuild.
No. You don't trade for Marc-Andre Fleury and Seth Jones if you're rebuilding.
No, and you're not holding on to Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane and Duncan Keith,
Yes,
and all these guys for as long as you did with, Corey Crawford. Like, you don't hold on to those guys as long as you did and try and say, oh, but we're also rebuilding. Like, no, you're holding on to your biggest assets that you would have used to tear it down to try and build for futures or younger players on the right. Like, you kept all those guys.
Well, I think that's when we get into this conversation, that's what makes it difficult because, like I said earlier, so few teams actually do it the way the Hawks do. Because, look, I think something that the Hawks are aware of is they won 3 Stanley Cups in the last decade. So they've got a little bit of credibility built in with the fans. They've got a little bit of trust that, hey, like, trust us, we're going to get back here. We know the way to do it. Now, I think a lot of fans have soured on Stan Bowman or on Kyle Davidson. Whether that's fair or not remains to be seen. But at least he's got a plan and he's sticking to it. I think people, whatever you felt of Stan Bowman, whether you thought he was good, average, bad, I think everyone would agree that he was very short-sighted. Everything was kind of year to year or this year, maybe next, looking ahead. Kyle Davidson has been, in my opinion, somewhat annoyingly patient with this rebuild. Yeah. But if you want to actually rebuild, then you kind of have to do it that way. And he tried the stopgap veterans last year, and there were varying returns from all those guys. But this feels like, and barring another transaction this offseason, which who knows, it feels like they're very willing to go young. And this is kind of where maybe the standings this year aren't as great. Maybe they're similar to what they were last year, maybe a few points up or down here or there. But at least you've got the young guys leading the charge. And I think the actual tear down, rebuild through the draft part, I don't want to say it's over because you're probably still going to have another lottery pick next year.
Yeah.
But now it's about you've got this surplus of prospects. You took a couple big swings in this 2025 draft with Nestor Sill and West saying, you know what, we've got a lot of guys. We can take our time with these two, really develop them well and patiently, and then hope they can join us when we're really hitting our wave here. It seems like that's kind of the plan now. So I think this year, in my mind, begins phase 2 of the rebuild.
Yeah, I would say so. The teardown phase is over very clearly. Like there's nothing else that you have. Like we as we've had these conversations about trades and whatnot to try and get, like, they don't have anything that you're taking away from the NHL roster to try and, reverse the swing of going down to going up. You're not taking anything off that roster because you just don't have those guys. The players that you're betting on are the young guys developing into NHL contributors and beyond, hopefully, because that's what you're betting on. So, yeah, I that phase is done. The upswing now is going to be, predicated on what these young guys do, and I think early returns so far on, the guys that were drafted and brought in, have been positive. Pretty much every pick of consequence is going in the right direction, or seems to be on a trajectory that is going to hit what you would hope from a first round pick or a second round pick. Like it's all early, of course. Like there's still there's still so much to learn about what Sam Renzel is going to be, what Frank Nazar is going to be, guys like that. We haven't seen a lot of them even play professionally before. There's a lot of hope and expectation for a guy like Sasha Boisvert, but he's still in college. So the expectation is still high because a lot of it is unknown. But there really hasn't been anyone in the group that is ultra concerning. Now, are some of the guys that were second and third round picks, maybe they might look like this might just be a guy who's kind of on the fringe of the NHL, AHL, maybe, but it's still hard to make that call at 20 years old.
It's also, second round picks are probably 50-50.
Yeah.
And third round picks are probably 30-70. In terms of like that's just the nature of the NHL draft. Is like not a lot of guys make it out to the NHL with big success. Those first round picks are what are really important. Like when's a good time to say okay, we can fairly analyze a draft, right? Like, would you say after 7 years, right? Would that be the?
Yeah, I mean that's even kind of feels like overshooting it. Like at least
how about 5 years?
I think for me it feels like if you're 5 years out from a draft, you should know a good portion of what you got out of that draft.
So in the 2020 draft rather. Almost everybody has played over 100 NHL games. The exceptions are Yaroslav Askarov, who's on his way to doing so, Rodion Amarov with Toronto, who's not played a single game.
Well, he died.
Oh yeah,
that was the guy. He had like a brain tumor. Yeah, Rodion Amarov.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes, I knew that name was familiar.
Yeah.
You've got Hendrix Lapierre with the Caps. He's got 84 games. Jacob Perreault with Anaheim has 1. So it's towards the bottom of the first round.
Mm-hmm.
Fewer. Second round, you've got a lot of guys who have not played a ton. Third round, even more. Like if you just go through the fourth round of the 2020 draft, 1, 2, 3 players have played an NHL game.
Yeah, it's a crapshoot.
That's just how it is.
It's a crapshoot. If you hit on those later round picks, like that's like a golden ticket essentially. Outside of winning the lottery, like if you get a guy in a 4th round or 5th round or 6th round pick that even not only plays in the NHL but also like excels, like that's impressive. A guy like Andrew Shaw is a rarity. 5th round pick ends up playing a key role on 2 cup teams. A guy like Louis Crevier being a 7th round pick, getting to the NHL. Like props to him for even getting to the NHL and then, ending up kind of finding, a home here and carving out a path to the NHL. Like that is impressive. So, Del Mastro was a 4th round pick and he looks like a guy that when it's all said and done is going to have a spot in the NHL somewhere, whether it's here or elsewhere. Like he'll be an NHL player. I have no doubts about that. So if you can find picks like that, like that's super impressive. And that's, you're really going to have to judge, Kyle Davidson with this rebuild plan. Like you look at some of his top picks and, this, we can dive into this spreadsheet and talk a little bit more about Kyle Davidson. It was put together by Sprout.
Good job, Sprout. Thanks for that.
Who's in our Diehard Discord. Looking at these draft picks, like we're still 2022 draft. This was Davidson's 4th, was his first. This past one was his 4th draft. So you're talking about still time left to kind of like let it play out, as we like to jokingly say.
Yep. But
that first draft is Korchinski, Nazar, Renzel, Ludwinski, Green, Hayes, Savoie, Thompson. All of them have played professional games now. By the end of last season, all of them have played at least a handful of professional games. Any of them concerning? Not really. The one that I would say, based on where he was picked and what he has done so far, is Paul Ludwinski.
Yeah.
And I think it's still hard to like close the book on him and be like, he's a bust.
And I feel like he was drafted for a role of like, this will be a bottom 6 grinding guy that we feel will be an NHL player. We don't project him to have a super high ceiling, but we're confident he'll be an NHL player of some form.
Yeah,
Is that fair?
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
I don't think you needed. I think a criticism of that draft class is if you really loved that kind of player, you could have found another one of those guys later in the draft, not in the second round. But anyways, like it's still, he's going to play again in Rockford this season. Like it takes some time for some of these players to fully assimilate to the professional game, and a guy with speed like that, that's great. That's going to get you. That's going to get you so far, but the mind and the hands and all that, like that has to catch up as well. So it's still time before you're even closing the book on boom or bust of these players.
Yes, and it's also important to remember too that that's Kyle Davidson's first draft. Mm-hmm. And maybe he's like, I like the player. Maybe I jumped the gun a little bit on him there because I just fell in love with the name and I liked what the scouts had to say. So maybe I took him a little sooner than I had to. And you learn from experience. And like now that it's his fourth draft, maybe it's a little more sound of a process. Like it's just kind of, these are not computers, right? And Kyle Davidson will hopefully get better at being a general manager as time goes on.
Yeah.
We saw Stan Bowman go the opposite way as time went on, but you would think that, okay, lesson learned. Maybe Paul Ludwinski was picked a little too soon. I think it's still too soon to say that, but if you want to find one of the Kyle Davidson picks so far that you're like, I don't know, that would be the one where you say a second round pick that doesn't seem to have an NHL future at this very moment. Okay. But for 4 drafts, that's pretty good.
Right.
All right. We got to hit the break zone. We'll be back in 2 minutes. We've got a lot of people watching, not a lot of people liking. So do us a favor, hit that like button for us, and we'll be back in 2 minutes on CHGO Blackhawks. What is Sunnyside? You should know by now. Unless it's your first time watching the show, I would understand. But we've been telling you about Sunnyside for years now at CHGO. It is your home for judgment-free cannabis shopping. It's my go-to for all my cannabis needs. And I started as a noob, and because of the great people at Sunnyside, I got educated, found out exactly what I wanted because I have trouble sleeping. And I went to some other dispensaries, just kind of blindly shopped, couldn't find what I wanted. Nope, Sunnyside's like, you need this. The good news, counting sheep, that will solve your problems. And it did, and it's my new favorite, and it's my go-to, and I use it all the time because Sunnyside's awesome, and they hooked me up. So when you want to get squared away with your cannabis game, hit up sunnyside.shop for bright buys every day, including 50% off your first 3 online purchases. Enter promo code HICHGO at checkout to qualify. Exclusions apply. Sunnyside Cannabis Dispensary, bright buys every day, only for 21 plus or Illinois MedCard holders.
And today is July 10th, which means yeehaw!
Woo!
The Cowboys and Cowgirls are out in the West Loop. It's Windy City Smokeout starting today through July 13th. 4 full days of country music, ice cold drinks, and all the barbecue your stomach can handle. Does it get any better than that? No, I say no. If you're looking for tickets for today and tomorrow, Thursday and Friday, are still available. Don't want to miss out on country's biggest stars like Bailey Zimmerman, Old Dominion, Ko Wetzel, and Dylan Gossett. They're going to be lighting up the stage all weekend long. Don't miss out on the best weekend of the summer. Grab your tickets right now at windycitysmokeout.com. Also, if you're out there today, if you're listening to this or you're watching live and you're heading down there later, check out the CHGO booth. We're going to be out there. I saw Greg Braggs is down there. We got a spin to win wheel.
Go anyway.
It's good stuff. So check it out. Windy City Smokeout going on this weekend.
All right, we're back. Hey, if you missed the big news, by the way, this morning, Adam Jahns is now part of CHGO Sports and CHGO Bears. The Hoge and Jahns podcast is officially a CHGO podcast, and that is exciting news. We've got some limited edition merch to honor the new move. That hat is pretty sick. You can get a Diehard membership right now. There's 2 options. You got option 1, $36 for the year. You get the limited edition Hoge and Jahns t-shirt, or for $59 a year, you get the limited edition Hoge and Jahns hat from Branded Bills. That is a nice looking lid. Mm-hmm. Get yourself one of those. That good looking stuff there.
That hat is in my All City store.allcity.com shopping cart right now.
There you go.
Absolutely.
So jump on that, allchgo.com, And we welcome our buddy Adam Jahns on board, who was on the Hawks beat for a while before joining the Bears. I don't know why he took a demotion, but whatever floats your boat.
Well, was it during their rebuild?
We should have him on to tell some old stories from the road. That would be great.
Absolutely,
that'd be awesome. So, welcome, Adam Jahns. Excited to have you here.
Yeah, and want to make sure that people who are already diehards have this information as well. You can use your diehard code on the shirt. If you haven't used your free shirt code yet, you can use that on the shirt. You can also use it on the hat, but it won't cover the entire cost of the hat, but it will mark it down as a discount. You can use that 20% off code. And yeah, so it's not just only for new diehards signing up, but just know that, those are a 1-year subscription. It's not the same as a recurring, but it's still a great offer. Both of them, $36 for a full year with all the benefits. $59 for the year with the hat and all the benefits. Very much worth it. And yeah, the quality of the merch is top notch.
To answer Edward's question, he's asking about the booth at Windy City Smokeout today. If we're offering any Hoge & Jahns merch, we are not.
That would be fun,
it is all
no.
pre-sale that you can order online.
Yep.
Just because we just launched it, and so you can pre-sale it online, and then it'll get shipped to you probably in a week or two.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sarah. Good stuff. All right, we got a big super chat, $20 coming through from Waleed Johnson. I hope I said that right. Help me understand what's missing on this team. I thought we got a young goaltender. Do we now just need a defensive stud and scoring? I don't know what's missing to make the Hawks great. So that's actually a really good point, because you feel like you have all the pieces necessary for the team to be good. You've got your franchise first-line center. You've got stud defensemen. They're just not fully developed yet. But when you have a fully realized Connor Bedard, Frank Nazar, Artem Levshinov, Kevin Korchinski, Alex Vlasic, Sam Renzel, when all these guys hit their primes, it's going to look different.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people were not around for the first couple years of Duncan Keith and Brent Seabrook. Mm-hmm. It was an adventure for those guys the first couple years. Like, there were questions on whether or not Duncan Keith was an NHL player.
They weren't Hall of Famers when they stepped onto the ice at 20, 21 years old.
Yes.
And that's the same case with these guys. It takes time. It's very, very rare, unless you're putting a 18-year-old on a contender right away, or you surround them with, legitimate NHL talent right away. It's very rare for a guy at 18, 19 years old in the NHL to step in and be a superstar. McDavid had that special talent. Edmonton had some NHL talent on that team, and you also look at that Edmonton team that McDavid stepped into. They also had Leon Draisaitl already. They had Ryan Nugent-Hopkins in early in his prime. They had Taylor Hall in his early 20s. Like, they had a lot of young talent around him working with him, and that helped him kind of be able to be that special star right away. Sidney Crosby, Alex Ovechkin, they stepped into bad teams, but still had guys that you'd say, oh yeah, they're in the NHL. Like, that's where they should be.
I like to
Connor
talk
Bedard didn't step into a team like that.
And that's why I always go back to Nathan MacKinnon. Nathan MacKinnon joins the Avalanche 2013-14, has 63 points in 82 games. Good rookie season, no doubt about it.
13-14?
Yes.
That was the year they made the playoffs.
Yes.
Right?
And that was a good team that he joined right away and had Connor Bedard-like numbers.
PDO machine.
Yeah. Yes. So then 14-15, 64 games, 38 points. 15-16, 72 games, 52 points. 16-17, 82 games, 53 points. Now, if we're in year 4 of Connor Bedard and he's in the 50 points, people are going to freak out.
Right.
But then I tell you, next year,
people are already freaking out. And he's
out.
had 2 60-point seasons as a teenager where he's been the best player on the team.
Bust.
Year 5 for Nathan MacKinnon, he jumps from 53 points in 82 games to 97 points in 74 games.
That's almost
the next
100.
year, 99 and 82, 93 and 69, 65 and 48, 88 and 65, 111 and 71, 140 and 82, and 116 and 79. The point is, we don't know exactly where these pieces are going to fall. But when it comes specifically to Connor Bedard, don't worry. He is right where he needs to be. Right? Look, is he Connor McDavid? He is not Connor McDavid. He is not Sidney Crosby. That's a given. Those two guys are like Mount Rushmore hockey players. Mm-hmm. They are all-time legends of the game. Yes. So if he is a tier below that in the McKinnon, Matthews, Malkin, that kind of a mold, I think you could still call it, maybe generational is not the right term, but it is a very sound first pick. I think that 100-point seasons are certainly in the cards for Connor Bedard soon. Maybe not next year, but 2 years, 3 years.
Yeah.
Sure. I think next year, a point per game is a fair expectation for him. But it just takes time. That's what a rebuild is. And again, this whole thing didn't really start until 2022. Mm-hmm. Like that was recently.
Yes.
That's not that long ago.
That was in the life of CHGO.
Yes.
Is when that started.
Yes.
We are the rebuild, basically. Yeah, I think when you look at it, and to the point that the super chat was making, like, shouldn't this already be like or shouldn't they have enough to already be like a great team? It's just like, it's different than basketball. It's different than football, where the rosters in basketball are more condensed. If you have 5 or 6 really good players, you have a good basketball team. You don't have to go deep on your bench. Hockey, you need to have depth at every position to right. be a solid team. Look at the teams that go far, like the Panthers and the Oilers and Dallas and like all these teams. Like their depth throughout the lineup. In football, when you're drafting these young players, first, second, third, fourth round picks play right away on some teams. Yeah. Especially first and second round picks are usually starters or like in the mix to get starting time right away for teams. And you also got to remember the guys that are getting picked, like in football terms, they're 21, 22, 23 years old. So the physical maturity and the development of their game in their sport is ahead of what you see with a lot of these guys in hockey, where they're, some make their debuts at 18, 19 years old. Some it's 20, they're 20 or 21. Like, you look at where Connor Bedard's at. He's had 2 full seasons in the NHL. He's turning 20 next week.
Right.
Frank Nazar's had 50 games in the NHL. He's 21.
Right.
So, like, it's the age maturity is different. The development of the game is different. And we talked about it a couple weeks ago, and I just kind of said it jokingly. But as I think about it more, I know we've gotten accustomed in the NHL to seeing like teenage phenoms develop and all that stuff. But just kind of seeing how many people are just like, this guy's a bust. And it's just like, and it's not just Bedard. Like the fan bases around the league do it for all these guys that are first round picks.
Yeah.
If you made it so you could, you change the draft, hypothetically. They're not going to do it. But hypothetically, if you change the draft to be, you have to be 19 to be eligible. And then if you said like 20 to play, to play in the NHL, right? You would give these guys 2 more seasons of playing in development leagues, whether it's overseas or in college or in Canadian juniors or anything like that, and then they'd be eligible to go to the NHL. Imagine the Blackhawks win the lottery. They pick Connor Bedard. He bumslays for 2 more years at Regina, and then at 20 years old, he makes his NHL debut. If Connor Bedard was going to be a rookie next season, I think your mind would be blown. If Frank Nazar was a rookie last year,
yeah,
the first time we'd ever see him in the NHL, which technically he was,
kind of, yeah.
But that development path would be if he had a 3rd year in college. You look at some of those, like if Korchinski had another year in junior and then became like, I think it would completely change the way that the narrative around these young players and the development path and process and expectations would be completely different. But again, they're not going to do it. So
yeah,
it's just a hypothetical, but I think it would completely change how you look at the scope of things. So when you're looking at it, like, why aren't these guys good already? It's because they're still developing. They're still developing their skills, and whether you're doing it in a development league or you're doing it professionally, like when you're on the NHL stage, the lights are brighter, the attention is harder on it compared to if you were playing in college or juniors or anything like that.
All right, we got to hit the break zone one more time. We're 25 likes away from 100, so let's get over that hump. We have well over 200 people watching, so let's get over that 100 like mark, please, and we'll be back in 2 minutes on CHGO Blackhawks. It's hot.
Mm-hmm.
Good thing Four Seasons Heating, Air Conditioning, Plumbing, and Electric has been serving Chicagoland for over 50 years. Now is the time, if you've not noticed, to get your AC checked out, and Four Seasons experts are ready to help you with AC installation, maintenance, and repair. Last year was officially Chicago's hottest year on record. 114 degrees at O'Hare? No, that's awful. You want to be inside. You want to be comfy. You want to be nice and cold. That's what it's all about. And the folks at Four Seasons will get you squared away with an AC tune-up. Save $50 and enjoy a 1-year no breakdown guarantee. You got to love that in the scorching Chicago summer. They are your local trusted experts at Four Seasons Heating, Air Conditioning, Plumbing, and Electric. Visit fourseasonsheatingcooling.com for all their special offers and money-saving coupons. That's fourseasonsheatingcooling.com.
And just like your favorite team needs a home ice advantage, your home needs a home floor advantage. That's where our friends at Empire Today can help you get that advantage. They have flooring experts, dedicated flooring professionals who focus on flooring every single day of their life. No days off for the flooring experts at Empire. And as you're talking about the heat this summer, sometimes if you have, old hardwood floors, heat changes can warp the floorboards, and you might say, oh, shoot, this is a little creakier than it was last summer. Well, might be time to call our friends at Empire Today and get new floors, and they can bring the showroom right to you so you can pick the right flooring, materials, colors, everything that fits in your space with your feng shui. They can bring it right to your doorstep. You can schedule a free in-home estimate today because some things are just better at home. CHGO listeners can also get a $350 discount when using the promo code CHGO. That's right, $350 off. Restrictions do apply. Visit empiretoday.com/CHGO for full details.
All right, welcome back. Just saw this on, I might have missed this earlier, but Cam Robinson with a tweet. He's as plugged in as anybody these days. He says, NHL GMs have now voted on re-centralizing the draft. While the league is yet to alert teams to the final results, it appears a majority have voted to keep it decentralized. If that holds, what a miss. Yeah, I thought that was going to be a 1-year deal after how poorly it went this year, but if Cam is right, and he usually is... it looks like another year.
Anton Frondell being picked by the Sharks.
That's true. He did kind of back off that, though, as the draft approached.
Convenient. I am the New York Mets old man Yankees. I'm the Yankees old man in the stands gif. Just a constant thumbs down.
I like it.
That's a horrible decision, NHL GMs. I know you're all listening, all 32 of you.
One is.
It's terrible. Terrible decision.
Yes.
It was like... I went back and watched part of the draft because we had our live stream and we weren't able to have sound on it. And as we were watching the draft, we're like, oh, this little room, like, this is kind of cool. Like, oh, different presentation. I went back and watched it after seeing some clips, and I was like, oh, this was a train wreck. If we had actually had sound on the TV for the live stream, we would have seen how much of a train wreck it was. Boy. It's just the cool thing that you had about your draft and you got rid of it. It's quintessential NHL decision. Gary Bettman obviously is trying to take his hands off of that decision by saying, "Look, this is what the owners want. Don't yell at me." It's the centralized draft is just a better idea. I don't care about logistics or the cost to get your.
If you can't afford to send your team to the draft, maybe you shouldn't be in the NHL.
Sorry that you're poor, NHL owner. Like, come on.
You have to settle for just
expansion
one yacht.
fees are $1 billion.
Yes.
Like, I don't want to hear that it's hard to fly out your staff. No, it's not. You have planes.
You also don't need to send 20 people.
Yeah. Maybe you don't need matching suits. Cut down on your budget that way.
You could have built an arena if your suits didn't match.
Yeah. So that's just a bad decision. If it's decentralized again, I'm going to be upset.
Dumb.
It will be, so I'll be upset.
$2 super chat from Nathan. Are Davidson and Blashill the new Savard and Tallon? I haven't seen Blashill do anything yet, so I'm not going to say that he's Denis Savard. I think he's Denis Savard was the ultimate meatball hire of this guy's a former Hawk and knows what it means.
Right.
No, he's
you got to commit.
Not really a coach.
But I think so. Maybe Nathan can. Yes. Okay. He has a comment down here.
Yeah,
this is where my thought went. He says, are they only the guys that are going to get you so far until someone else is there when the Hawks are good again? See, in that context,
sure.
I've never really. I have thought that they are going to give Davidson a long time to kind of figure this out. I still think that's going to be the case, but now more than ever before, in my head, am I thinking, okay, if we get to a point where getting over the hump is necessary, like whether it's a big trade or a big free agency or something. And as we've kind of talked about Davidson in his time here, he's made some really good trades that you come out and say Blackhawks had the better end of that.
Yeah.
He's made free agency signings that have, for the most part, made sense for what they were trying to accomplish. But what he's been trying to accomplish with those trades and those free agency signings hasn't been the big splash to really add something to the team. And there is going to be a point where push comes to shove and he'll have to do that.
If he can't get it done,
and if he can't,
then his job should be on the line.
Then maybe you look at it and say, okay, he's had 5 or 6 draft classes. A lot of these guys look like they're going to pan out, and if they do, that's wonderful. But then it might just be like, well, he set the table, but now we need someone who's going to, finish the deal and be able to get the big trade or the big free agency move that is going to move the Blackhawks up to that contender point.
I wonder if it turns out that the drafts remain good, but the ability to pull off a major trade or signing starts to lack, if there's some sort of we're going to hire a director of hockey operations that oversees everything. We'll still call Kyle Davidson a GM, just like Carter Hawkins is the GM of the Cubs, but we know it's Jed Hoyer doing most of the work. I wonder if they would bring somebody in like that to get. I think that we're way ahead of our skis right now. But I
wouldn't want to be in a situation where you have one person trying to make decisions and another person I just think you open up the door to conflict,
Sure.
butting heads, and then stagnating a team.
Look, but the fact remains, I am so far pleased with what Kyle Davidson's job overall.
Yeah.
Has he been perfect? No. There's no perfect GM in any sport. There's no GM that bats 1,000 ever. However, it still remains to be seen if he can land that big fish. And I'm kind of, and even though it is factually correct that it takes 2 teams to make a trade and we can't force guys to be made available, you can sort of force teams' hands by being super competitive, super aggressive with offers to make a trade or whatever. So, look, I was annoyed free agency day when they didn't do anything, but Marner, that was seemed like already going to happen, that he was going to Vegas. Ehlers was kind of the one guy that really got out there, because even Besser went back to Vancouver. Ehlers goes to Carolina, wants to go to a winner. Fine, he's approaching 30, so he wants a chance to win a cup. Understood. So, okay, but I can't have that excuse year after year after year. At some point, you've got to go make the big swing and land it. And maybe it's this coming summer. Maybe it's the summer after that. But I think there's going to become a time here where Danny Wirtz maybe starts to lose a little bit of patience with things too. Because at some point, the bottom line is going to get impacted here. And maybe fans stop showing up, or there's just general apathy about the whole team, that's a real thing. Like, you can't be irrelevant for too long. Bedard or not, you've got to find a way to get this team to the next level soon. I know we've talked about it all winter, all spring. There were only so many options the Hawks had this summer. I'm glad they didn't trade for Matt Dumba like the Pittsburgh Penguins just did for some reason, or someone like that. But at some point, he's got to figure it out. I'm confident that he will. But if he can't, then you got to start having some tough conversations about things.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair. I mean, you have to be able to be judged based on results at some point. And when you as an organization say we're ready to take the next step, expectations have to be higher. The bar has to be higher. And if you fall short of it, there's got to be consequences to that. And I think, you look at in the context of going through a rebuild, and yeah, you're not signing free agents that are going to put you over the top, but as in our chat here, Change the Logo is saying, what free agents has he actually signed that have actually panned out? My comment was more, he has signed guys that have worked. Majority of them have worked for the role that they were supposed to be. I'll go through this. This is from, again, the spreadsheet done by Sprout, one of our diehards. He's in the summer of 2022, signed Max Domi to a 1-year deal. Everyone knew the deal with that. He's going to play here, play well, get flipped. That's exactly what happened. Good for Max Domi.
Yep.
Alex Stalock was free agent pick. Remember how fun it was for Alex Stalock to be around here? He was a Masterton Trophy nominee for the season he had. Yeah. Colin Blackwell. Did we joke about him falling down all the time? Yes. But was he an energy player, a good depth role guy, and has actually been a player that the Dallas Stars have invested in?
Scored some big goals in these playoffs.
Yes. Here's one that I think, because of other situations, will get poo-pooed. But up until his dismissal from the team for off-ice issues, Corey Perry was playing exactly the way the Blackhawks wanted him to when he was here, and having the impact they wanted him to. On ice, it was working. Off ice, we still don't know the full story of what happened, but they made the right decision in their eyes. That's completely fine. Ryan Donato was a free agent signing. That worked out.
But see, this
Bertuzzi and Tavo have been the guys that they've should have been.
Is Ryan Donato scores 31 goals, and while we all are sort of is this really who he is? And we think probably not. Why does Davidson get no credit for finding a guy who was a complete journeyman, who had been on 3 teams before he joined the Hawks, 4 teams, whatever it is?
He's been on 5 in his career, which
so
is now I think 6 or 7 years long. He
finds that diamond in the rough for dirt cheap. He gets 31 goals out of the guy, but he can't make any good free agent signings. The evidence is there, and Bertuzzi and Tavo, for as frustrating as parts of their seasons were, they hit the back of the hockey card on the nose, both of them.
They were what they were expected to be. Same for, I know people weren't jazzed about Pat Maroon and Craig Smith and Alec Martinez, but for what they were expected to do, they did it. So, yeah, the Brody one, bad. Laurent Brossoit, you have no idea.
He got hurt after.
He gets signed, and he hasn't played hockey since.
July 1st, no one batted an eye at that deal.
Yeah,
everyone thought it was a great deal.
Everyone praised it. We were like, oh, snap. We got a 1-2 now with Mrazek and Brossoit. I mean, I look at this list. Are there any other major misses besides Brody? Maybe Andreas Athanasiou in the long run was a miss, but you brought him in. He had a 20-goal season, and then you re-signed him.
And he had a severe injury.
Yeah, and then he had a big problem. Yeah. So, I don't know. I think, there's something to be said for being able to make the moves that you need to in the situation that you have put yourself in, going through a rebuild. He's drafted well, I would say. Give him a passing grade for drafting. Trades, for the most part, I think it's few. I think you can count on one hand, if not a couple of fingers, how many trades he's made that you'd say that was bad. Same thing with signings. And
the only one that is definitively bad, I think, is the Hagel trade.
Hagel trade got you Tkachuk, Radish, Oliver Moore, and was it not the Rinzel pick?
Oh, yeah. Was that the Rinzel pick? So that might not even be.
Well, let me go back to the spreadsheet because it's on there.
Yeah, I'm looking right here. It was, Boisvert is the other one.
Boisvert. Okay,
Yeah.
so you got Moore and Boisvert,
So
a 20-goal
remains
season
to be
out of
seen.
Taylor Radish,
Yeah.
and NHL games out of Boris Tkachuk.
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, it's if Moore and Boisvert, if either of them play close to a Hagel or both of them do, it's a win.
Yeah.
But, again, that's one of those things like we were talking about with draft classes. When you're making trades that involve picks and future picks, like it takes time to let those things kind of play out before you say boom or bust. Oliver Moore's played, 9 NHL games? It's going to take some time. I don't know. It's definitely an interesting idea about like, okay, is he going to be a table setter or is he going to GM his way to contention?
Yeah.
We have yet to see, when you have to make that big move. And they talked about, that they were trying to convince Jake Gensel to come here 2 summers ago. Gensel made the right career move in saying, no, I'm going to go to Tampa Bay and, continue to contend. And I think that's the thing with a lot of these free agents is like when you get to free agency, you're in your prime. And you want to make sure that a lot of these guys, if they come from contending teams and they've played Stanley Cup playoff hockey, they don't want to backtrack. And some of them you might be able to entice with a paycheck. But others, it's down to, what the team is going to do when it's April and May and June. Like, so I think what this team can do this year to move the rebuilding process forward and move into that next phase and hopefully, progress from, October to April. We're talking about a progression of the team and the rebuild process as a unit is, these young guys that are going to be playing Rinzel, Nazar, Levshinov, Kaiser. We'll see what Arvid Soderblom ends up being after having a bounce back year. See what Spencer Knight is as a starter. He's never done it before, being a starter in the NHL. If all those guys seem like they have taken that step from October to April forward collectively as a group, then you go into next summer and you might have free agents around the league looking at the Blackhawks and saying, these young guys have it. So let me see if that's something to be interested in or something that I want to be a part of. And they might look like the 07-08 Blackhawks or something like that, where then you say, oh, maybe, then you get a Brian Campbell looking at the Hawks kind of signing kind of thing. I don't know. Maybe it's wishful thinking that it's going to be that big of a jump. I don't expect it to be that big of a jump, but I think there is a reasonable path where you're looking at these young guys and say they could do that.
Yeah, a couple comments I want to get to. We had one from Jim earlier in the show. He says, so many questions with this team. We should know more at the end of the season on what we have. We still need a top 6 forward without question. And I think, that's kind of where we're at with this thing. Like this is the first year where we're going to get a decent look at the kids. And I know someone else mentioned earlier, like there's 8 veteran forwards and there's not really spots open, but I do think there's a pretty good possibility that when the trade deadline comes, some of those vets are shipped out. I think Dickinson will be gone at the deadline. You could probably argue Ilya Mikheyev could be gone at the deadline.
Probably.
Connor Murphy will probably be gone at the deadline. So then you can have Boisvert finishing his college season coming over. Or if Frondell goes back to Sweden and his SHL season ends in March, he can come join after the trade deadline. Mm-hmm. And then those spots start to fill in. Right now, you've really got 1, maybe 2 spots open for a young player that you weren't expecting. like a Moore or a Doc or whoever it might be.
Yeah.
But they're going to become open as the year goes on, and like who knows how the veterans shake out this year. They've shown that when a veteran, like this was kind of the thing last year, is like, well, boy, you've got these veteran guys and they're not playing well, and you've got young guys ready to go, like Nazar, for example. No problem waiving Joey Anderson and sending him down. No problem benching TJ Brody for the last 3 months of the season,
right?
Basically, so young guys could play because he wasn't doing anything. So I think that one thing we do know about Kyle Davidson is that he is not sentimental. Like, tore the Band-Aid off of Kane and Taves, which a lot of GMs would not have had the balls to do at all, and moved on from Taves, traded Kane, traded DeBrincat. It would have been really easy for him to say, well, we're going to rebuild, but we're going to keep these guys around for continuity and blah, blah, blah.
That's what Stan Bowman was doing and would have done had he still been in the GM chair. All those guys would have stuck around. And the missing the playoffs, I think it's hard to look at that and say, yeah, they would have clawed their way out, because I think at some point you just kind of plateau with those players, and who knows if Brandon Hagel becomes the player he ended up becoming in Tampa. When you're surrounded by elite talent, you can have your own skills elevated. So I don't know.
I've seen the name Jack Roslovic floating around in our chat and elsewhere. That, to me...
Is he still a free agent?
He is still a free agent.
That's interesting.
He is, 28 right now?
Yeah.
39 points in 81 games last year in Carolina. Doesn't that, to you, feel like taking a spot away from a young player? Don't you feel
it would be.
Don't you feel like you can get 39 points from Oliver Moore?
That'd be nice.
39. I don't know. Maybe that's high, but
that would feel high, but it would be nice.
And you remember you traded for Burakovsky, who's going to be in the 30 to 40 some point range, probably pretty predictably if he's healthy.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. Like, that's a move for the sake of a move. I think what we're talking about is, and someone in the chat's like, did you really want him to overpay, $15 million for Mitch Marner? No, I didn't. But what we're trying to say is, the one box to check, for me anyway, is signing the big deal when it's time. And if Kyle Davidson doesn't believe it's time, that's fine. He's the architect of this rebuild. He's clearly got a plan that he's sticking to, but at some point he's got to show it. That's all I'm saying. We put a video out last week where it was a similar conversation, and everyone's like, these meatballs. I'm like, no one's listening to the context of what we're saying. All we're saying is it remains to be seen if he can get it done, because he doesn't seem like he's tried yet, aside from Jake Gensel.
Yeah.
And Jake Gensel chose Tampa.
And even that, I don't even think it was a situation where it was like the Blackhawks and Tampa are the two teams pushing the hardest for Jake Gensel, and it's going to come down to the wire, just speaking like an Elliot Friedman tweet or something like that. Like, I don't think it was like that. I think it probably was more or less, we offered Jake Gensel an opportunity and offered him a contract and had conversations. You don't know how often or how, what the dollars were, or if it was like we offered him $11 million and he took a discount to go to Tampa or whatever. Like, I don't think it was that scenario, because that doesn't feel like a Kyle Davidson play at this stage of the game.
No Royd says, does Lafferty, Mikheyev, Foligno, the majority of these vets are taking spots away from a young guy? Even at the trade deadline, it's meaningless hockey. But if Oliver Moore is lighting the AHL on fire, they don't have to wait to the deadline to make a move.
Right.
And the idea that, they traded for Sam Lafferty. If Sam Lafferty is going to play 82 games for the Blackhawks, there's no way. He's not an everyday guy. He doesn't need to be an everyday guy.
Yeah.
He is a veteran option that brings a certain element of the game that the Hawks, I think we all admit, have been missing over the last few years. That physicality with the speed. That's a good thing to have, but he's not a guy who's going to play 82 games for the Hawks next year. There's no way. So if a kid comes up, they will find a way to get that kid in the lineup. Absolutely. Absolutely. You don't think Kyle Davidson wants his stud prospects in the NHL as soon as they're ready.
Yeah, he is.
That's how he keeps his job.
Davidson's guys are the guys he drafted. The guys
Yes.
the young guys he's brought in. It's a lot different than Stan Bowman was, where it's like, oh, my guys are all the veterans. Especially with Quenneville, like my guys are all the veterans. Sorry to be a young up and coming player in the old Blackhawks regime, where it was just like, oh, you're just gonna get buried, and any one mistake you're benched, and then you're back to Rockford. The Jeremy Morans and Brandon Pearys of yore. Davidson's guys are the young players. So if there's an opportunity and a reason for a young player to be moved up to the NHL and get NHL opportunity, by gosh, they're going to get it, because he's brought in these veterans, yes, but he is not, I would imagine, dead set loyal on Sam Lafferty or Ilya Mikheyev being the guys that he's got to respect and keep around and make sure that they're on the roster when the Blackhawks are contending again. They're not.
Yeah.
Like you said before, Mikheyev feels like he had a great end to last year. If he replicates the end of last year's season at the start of this year and through the winter, he's a wonderful trade deadline piece.
Yeah.
Sam Lafferty, if he's what he was last year in Buffalo, single-digit points in 60 games, or was 7 points in 60 games or whatever it is, that's fine sitting on the bench.
Yeah.
Or that's fine being waived to Rockford, and maybe someone takes a waiver claim on him. They're going to move guys at the deadline. Like, you don't have to. It's not so cut and dry, black and white, that because you say, well, we're going to let the kids play, then it has to be lineups like we saw at the end of the season where it's 12 or 13 players who are 20 years old. It doesn't have to be that.
Keep in mind you have one defenseman over the age of 30 on your team. Oh, actually over the age of 24.
25.
Aside from Vlasic and Crevier. Like, that's a really young team. Up a little bit, I'm DeBaron. Keep going up a little bit, Sarah. There it is. He says, I mean, the point is he has to prove he won't pull a Rick Hahn, acquire the young players, and blow it by not being able to get Manny or Harper. The difference between the Blackhawks and the White Sox is that the Blackhawks are a destination franchise in the NHL. We had Brendan Perlini on yesterday, and he talked about how this is a guy who played for Detroit. He played for Edmonton. Mm-hmm. He played for a lot of teams, and said the Blackhawks are in a different stratosphere when it comes to accommodations for players, opportunities in the city, opportunities for families. Free agents are not looking at standings alone or prospects alone. They're looking at what is the best situation for themselves. And Chicago offers that. The White Sox, on the other hand, are historically a low-level operating organization. We can get Sean Anderson in here to tell you all about it if you want, or you can just listen to CHGO White Sox.
I mean, it's a team owned by Jerry Reinsdorf.
They cut corners. The players don't get the things they need. You've seen stories coming out from last year's team that the players were faking injuries because the leadership is not strong enough. Like, it's a totally different the comparison between the Blackhawks and the White Sox cannot be made. Now, if it was the Bill Wirtz Blackhawks, you could have that talk.
Mm-hmm.
But even the Bill Wirtz Blackhawks, for the majority of his ownership time, were a competitive team. They had, like a 37-year playoff streak or something? I know it was easier to make the playoffs back then, sure. But to compare the White Sox as a destination and the Hawks as a destination is two totally different things.
Mm-hmm.
Totally different.
Yep.
And the Gigadees is kidding himself by saying the Sox are a destination too, Jay. They are not. They are not a destination. They're not.
All the Sox Stadium has is better food.
It's not even about, it's just, they just don't, players don't want to play in a vacant ballpark. They don't want to, they want big money. The Sox don't pay anybody. Like, it's.
And then it's amenities.
Yeah. And amenities too. It's not like, I don't care. I don't hate the White Sox. I'm a Cub fan, but I just focus my hatred on St. Louis at all times. Don't really care one way or the other about the White Sox. So, but it's just what it is.
The White Sox is kind of just a place for the prospects just to develop because they'll get lots of playing time.
Yeah.
Because there's nobody else really to play.
Right. So anyway, so I see what you're saying, but I think players know the reputation of this organization is sterling around the league.
Yeah, I would say as a player, going to Chicago for the amenities and the city and the way that the organization treats its players and the way that, they're a team that has a direction. It's not a direction everybody likes, but it's a team that has a direction. If you can say, there are teams that operate that just kind of seem like, well, this year we might do this, and then next year might be something different, but we'll worry about it next year. Like, Kyle Davidson has a direction he wants to go, and they're going to go in it. So if you want to be a part of it, you can. It's very clear out in the open that that's the direction that they want to go.
All right, we're going to wrap things up. Thanks for being with us today. We appreciate it. Thanks for getting us over the 100 like mark. If you've not already hit the like button, please do. We would greatly appreciate that. And we'll be back tomorrow at 2 o'clock right here on the CHGO Blackhawks Podcast.
We all silly like the mayor.